In the early 1800s, the Bell family left their familiar life behind in North Carolina. A cloud of hopeful anticipation hung over them as they embarked on a perilous journey towards a new existence in Robertson County, Tennessee. John Bell, the family patriarch, viewed this uncharted land as a promise of prosperity for his loved ones. Little did he know, their soon-to-be home concealed mysteries far beyond their wildest imaginations. The house they built was an unpretentious yet sturdy structure, blending seamlessly with the dense forest that hugged its boundaries. Even in its simplicity, the Bells found comfort, carving out a peaceful existence amongst the untouched wilderness. John Bell, with his wife Lucy and their children, sought solace in the isolation. Their closest neighbors were miles away, the distance a buffer against the outside world. But as the family would soon discover, the isolation that first brought serenity would eventually bring an eerie sense of unease. As days turned into weeks, the family settled into their new life. John toiled on the land, transforming the wilderness into a budding farm, while Lucy tended to the hearth, cooking meals and looking after the children. The eldest Bell child, Betsy, found fascination in the whispers of the wind and the ceaseless chirping of the crickets, the symphony of nature serving as a constant backdrop to their lives. But amidst the sweet serenity, odd occurrences began to sprinkle their daily routine. It started subtly: a misplaced tool, a missing chicken, a flicker of movement in the corner of one's eye. The Bells initially dismissed these as common mishaps of frontier life. However, as these occurrences grew in frequency, the family could no longer ignore the brewing unease. The children complained of hearing odd noises at night, soft whispers and hollow knocks echoing from the walls. Dismissed as products of overactive imaginations, these noises were merely bedtime tales spun by the dark. Yet the silence of the frontier seemed to magnify these inexplicable incidents. The cold Tennessee nights carried an air of mystery, and the solitude amplified every creak and sigh of the ancient woods. The family, isolated in their home, clung to each other for comfort. Despite the growing fear, they held fast to their hopeful beginnings and ventured into an uncharted reality, which painted a stark contrast against the serene wilderness they had initially encountered. The Bell family's relocation into the opaque wilderness was more than a move. It was the beginning of a strange journey that would etch their names into history. The tranquil forest of Tennessee bore witness to their tale, its silence pierced by the unfolding drama of inexplicable happenings. As the sun dipped below the horizon each evening, blanketing the homestead in a cloak of darkness, one could almost hear the whispered prelude of the spectral saga that was yet to unfold. Little did the Bells know, their wilderness was not as uninhabited as it seemed. The tranquility that once graced the Bell residence gradually began to wither away, replaced by an air of unsettling tension. The once silent nights were no longer calm, and the wilderness that once hummed with the soothing rhythm of nature began to sing an eerie melody. The first whispers of the nocturnal terror came as barely audible sounds, a faint scraping against the wooden walls of their home, a low murmur outside their windows, a light tap-tap-tap echoing from within the dark corners of their residence. These sounds were easy to dismiss initially, the rational mind attributing them to the aging timbers of their home or the nocturnal creatures of the wilderness. However, these innocent explanations lost their hold when the children woke screaming in the middle of the night. Little Betsy was the first, jolted awake by a sound that she could only describe as a low, menacing growl near her ear. A sound that was distinctly out of place in the otherwise serene rural backdrop. The terror in her eyes was mirrored by the chill that ran down John Bell's spine. That night, the entire family huddled together in the master bedroom, fear gnawing at their hearts as the unsettling sounds continued to echo around them. Then came the scratches. Faint at first, they escalated into frantic clawing, as if an unseen entity was desperately trying to get inside. The muffled whispers evolved into full-blown wails that chilled their blood. A shudder-inducing mournful cry from an unseen source, reverberating through the hollow halls of their once peaceful home. The spectral whispers grew louder and more terrifying each night, turning the wilderness surrounding their home into a theater of unseen horrors. Yet when morning came, the terror of the night seemed absurd in the daylight. The house would fall silent, returning to its normal, peaceful state, making the previous night's events seem like a vivid nightmare. Despite this, a sense of creeping dread began to dominate their days. The previously comforting isolation of their home now felt suffocating. The cheerful chirping of the crickets was now a dreadful prelude to the night's horrors, and the rustling leaves seemed to whisper warnings of the imminent spectral visitations. As the haunting escalated, their days became a dreadful countdown to sunset, and each falling night became a gateway to an unseen realm of terror. Their home, once a symbol of their hopeful future, had become an arena of the inexplicable. As darkness fell each night, they found themselves standing on the precipice of the unknown, hearts pounding, the once comforting sounds of the wilderness replaced with the harrowing echoes of unseen entities. Their abode was no longer a home. It had become the stage for a chilling symphony of spectral whispers. Following the initial whispers, the Bell home seemed to breathe with a life of its own. The once subtle hints of a haunting escalated into blatant displays of spectral activity. The whispers grew into disembodied voices, at times murmuring indistinguishable phrases, at others wailing in the dark, their laments echoing throughout the house. It was during these nights that the apparitions began. Shadows danced on the walls even when there was no source of light, and unseen hands left chilling touches on their skin. Objects levitated, hovering mid-air before crashing onto the floor, and locked doors swung wide open, the wooden frames shuddering under invisible force. The most terrifying spectacle of all was the physical manifestation of the ghost. An entity, appearing as an elderly woman, began to reveal herself to the family. Clad in a long, tattered dress, she bore a ghastly visage that struck paralyzing fear into their hearts. Her hollow eyes, bottomless pits of darkness, stared at them with an inscrutable gaze, and her voice, a rasping whisper, seemed to seep into their bones. Night after night, the apparition targeted Betsy, the youngest Bell child. The sweet girl of just 11 years found herself the main focus of this relentless spectral torment. She woke screaming from deep sleeps, her dreams invaded by the ghostly old woman. Her days became plagued with inexplicable ailments. Her previously rosy cheeks turned pale and lifeless, her eyes shadowed with terror and exhaustion. As if the haunting of their youngest wasn't horrifying enough, John Bell, the head of the family, began to experience torturous physical afflictions. A strange and inexplicable illness gripped him, weakening his body and dulling his mind. His strong physique, hardened by years of toil on the farm, wilted under the spectral onslaught. Each encounter with the spectral entity seemed to drain the family's spirits further, their life force seemingly siphoned away. A heavy air of dread lingered in the once welcoming home, wrapping around their hearts like a vice. The previously comforting hearth now offered no warmth, its flame flickering as if in sync with the ghostly presence. The wilderness around them, once a source of solace and inspiration, was now a canvas for their nightmare. The wind howled like a chorus of lost souls. The trees rustled ominously, their branches scratching against the house as if seeking entry. The sunsets, once breathtakingly beautiful, now signaled the beginning of another night of terror. Amidst this growing chaos, the Bell family clung together, their love for each other their only shield against the escalating supernatural onslaught. Their home had become a battlefield, a place where the living clashed with the unseen. The once dreamy homestead had been transformed into a house of horrors, its every corner echoing with the chilling remnants of the ghostly presence. As the days wore on, the Bells found themselves thrust deeper into the heart of an unthinkable supernatural terror. Desperation began to gnaw at the edges of the Bells' determination as they sought to reclaim their home from the unseen terror. The paranormal activities that began as eerie whispers had now grown into a daily horror show, the entity in their home becoming more powerful and frightening with each passing day. Despite their initial reluctance to draw attention to their plight, the escalating spectral onslaught left them with no choice but to seek help. The once self-reliant and proud John Bell found himself knocking on the doors of neighbors, his eyes hollow with fear and desperation, pleading for their assistance against the horrors that his family was facing. Word of the haunting began to spread through the community like wildfire. While some dismissed the stories as superstitious nonsense, many were drawn to the tales of terror emanating from the Bell home. Ministers, psychics, and curious onlookers flocked to the house, drawn by a morbid fascination and a desire to help. Each new set of eyes brought a fresh wave of terror for the Bells. As if aware of their pleas for help, the entity intensified its haunting, showcasing its power to the spectators. Objects moved of their own accord, unseen hands slapped the curious visitors, and the disembodied voice echoed throughout the house, threatening and taunting its occupants. An exorcism was attempted, the local minister leading a heart-wrenching plea to the heavens, begging for deliverance from the evil that gripped their home. The spectral entity, however, was not swayed. It interrupted the exorcism with a terrifying display of power, the house shaking as if in the grip of an unseen storm, the voice laughing in the dark, mocking their attempts at driving it away. The fear within the Bell home was palpable, the once sturdy walls now seeming to close in on them. Visitors left with wide eyes and pale faces, the chilling experience rooting itself in their hearts. Whispers of the Bell Witch, as the entity had come to be known, spread throughout the community, the tale turning into a horrifying legend. In the midst of the terror, a glimmer of hope began to surface within the family. The more the entity revealed itself, the more they learned about it, their fear turning into determination. The once peaceful family of farmers found themselves fighting an unseen war, their love for each other their only weapon against the horrors that plagued them. Despite the escalating dread, the Bell family continued to seek help, their desperate need to reclaim their home driving them forward. Their home was no longer a haven, it was a battlefield, and they found themselves at the front line, facing a spectral entity that seemed hell-bent on their destruction. As each night fell, they braced themselves for the next wave of the spectral onslaught, their fear intermingled with a growing sense of determination and hope. The terror that had invaded the Bell household seemed to come alive in the fifth moon of their ordeal. The house, once a testament to the Bells' hope for a better future, now bore the scars of the spectral onslaught. The once sparkling eyes of the children were now shadowed with fear. The entity, having showcased its power in a myriad of horrifying ways, chose this time to reveal its true malevolence. Its focus, now more than ever, seemed to center around John Bell and young Betsy, their suffering a form of twisted amusement for it. The nights were an unending horror show, filled with spine-chilling apparitions, gut-wrenching screams, and a terror so tangible it hung heavy in the air. The ghostly figure had taken on a more definitive form, its features more frightening than before. The once faint specter of an elderly woman was now a horrific sight, her ghastly face twisted in a perpetual snarl. John Bell was subjected to relentless spectral assaults. His strength waned as he faced violent convulsions, his body seeming to move on its own accord, jerking and twitching in a macabre dance. His voice was stolen, replaced by an eerie whisper that mirrored that of the entity, a cruel mockery of his plight. Meanwhile, Betsy's condition worsened. Her dreams were invaded by visions of the ghostly figure, the entity's grip on her consciousness unyielding. She would wake, screaming and sobbing, her small body trembling with fear. The family watched, helpless, as their beloved father and sister were tormented. The fear that gripped their hearts was almost crippling. The brave attempts to seek help seemed futile in the face of this terrifying escalation. The entity in their home was not just a haunting presence anymore. It was a malevolent force intent on their destruction. Yet, in their darkest hour, the Bells did not succumb to despair. They clung to one another, their shared fear cementing their bond. Their home, while a battlefield, was also their fortress. Each new day was faced with a sense of grim determination, a testament to their will to survive. Despite the unending nights of terror, the family held on to a glimmer of hope. The entity, as powerful and terrifying as it was, had not broken them. They faced each new horror with renewed resolve, their spirit refusing to be extinguished. The face of fear had been revealed in their home, and the Bell family had no choice but to stare back, their love for each other a beacon of light in the engulfing darkness. The haunting of the Bell residence had reached its zenith, pushing the family to the brink of despair. The ghostly figure, the whispers, the strange occurrences, and the toll it took on John and Betsy had worn them down. But they were not defeated, their love for each other fueling their determination to confront their spectral tormentor. They stood together, fortified by their shared experiences and driven by a single goal: to reclaim their home from the entity that had terrorized them. The once serene farmhouse had become a fortress in their battle against the unseen, every corner a potential battleground, every shadow a lurking threat. The nights were the hardest, filled with terror and uncertainty, but they met each one with resilience. During these long nights, they found strength in each other's presence. The terror they faced was unimaginable, but they faced it together. John, despite his weakening condition, stood as the stalwart protector of his family, his love for them outweighing the fear that gnawed at his heart. His wife, Lucy, proved to be a pillar of strength, her unyielding spirit a beacon for their terrified children. The haunting intensified, as if in response to their growing resistance. The ghostly figure seemed more malevolent, its terrifying face a constant reminder of their spectral foe. It tormented them with horrific visions, and its chilling laughter echoed through their home, a dreadful soundtrack to their plight. They sought help from every possible source: priests, spiritualists, and even skeptics who were quickly turned into believers by the chilling spectacle. Each visitor left the house visibly shaken, the eerie aura of the place undeniable. Yet no one could offer a solution to their problem. Each attempted exorcism, each protective charm, every prayer seemed to fuel the entity rather than diminish it. Desperation clawed at them, but they held on to hope. The spectral entity had turned their lives into a nightmare, but they refused to let it break them. They stood their ground, their determination unyielding. Each new day was a victory, a testament to their courage in the face of unparalleled terror. Their ordeal was a trial by fire, pushing them to their limits, testing their courage and their love for each other. As they prepared for the final confrontation, they knew they could not back down, not while their family and their home were at stake. It was a battle against the unseen, against fear itself, and they vowed to face it head-on, no matter what horrors awaited them. The climax of their nightmarish ordeal arrived with a chilling revelation. The ghostly figure, having reveled in the terror it had sown, chose to reveal its purpose. In a horrifying spectacle, the entity declared its intentions in a rasping voice that seemed to reverberate from every corner of the Bell home. Its target was clear: John Bell. The reasons for its relentless haunting remained shrouded in mystery, yet its venomous hatred for the family patriarch was unmistakable. As the entity continued to speak, a cold dread filled the room, the chilling words painting a terrifying picture of their spectral foe's intentions. John Bell, weakened and frail, was subjected to an unimaginable torment. The ghostly figure seemed to manifest more powerfully around him, its hollow eyes burning with a malicious glee. As it spoke, he was gripped by convulsions, his body trembling violently under the spectral assault. His family watched in horror as the father they knew was being consumed before their eyes. His roars of pain were a heart-wrenching soundtrack to the chilling spectacle. Yet, amidst the terror, they saw a glimpse of their father's resilience. His eyes, although filled with pain, sparkled with an unyielding spirit, his determination a beacon of hope in their darkest hour. The entity turned its attention to the spectators, a cruel smirk playing on its spectral lips. The walls of the house seemed to close in as it reveled in the terror it had created. The voice boomed, the chilling laughter echoing throughout the house, a terrifying testament to its power. Amid the terror, the Bells found the strength to fight back. The fear that had initially paralyzed them had turned into a roaring fire of determination. Their love for their father, their desire to protect their family, fueled their resistance. Despite the overpowering fear, they stood their ground, their hearts beating as one against the spectral onslaught. The entity's revelation was a terrifying insight into their nightmare, but it also marked the beginning of the end. They had been pushed to the edge, their lives turned upside down, their home transformed into a battlefield. Yet they remained unbroken. The spectral entity had intended to break their spirits, but it only managed to forge them into something stronger. As the final chapter of their ordeal began, the Bells stood together, ready to face whatever horrors the entity had in store. They were a family, bound by love and tested by fear, and they would not go down without a fight. The haunting of the Bell house was far from over, but the Bells had made their stand. They were ready to reclaim their home, whatever the cost may be. As the haunting reached its zenith, the Bells found a renewed sense of purpose. Despite their terror, they remained undaunted, their love for their family proving stronger than their fear. The menacing figure had declared its intention, but the Bells had made a declaration of their own. They would not be defeated. They would not let their home be consumed by the darkness. John Bell, though visibly weakened by the ghostly assault, drew upon a reserve of strength that seemed to astound even the entity. His voice, though faint and strained, carried a note of resolve that echoed through the house. With each defiant word, he seemed to challenge the entity, his love for his family stronger than any spectral presence. His children, inspired by their father's courage, mirrored his determination. Their wide-eyed fear was replaced by a grim resolve. They stood together, their young faces hardened by the experiences they had been forced to endure. The entity responded to their defiance with a terrifying display of power. The house shook, spectral laughter echoed, and for a moment it felt as if the very fabric of their reality was coming apart. Yet, amidst the chaos, the Bells stood strong, their resolve unbroken. The final confrontation with the spectral entity was as terrifying as it was transformative. The ghostly figure focused its wrath on John Bell, determined to break him. But he stood his ground, his family by his side. They fought back against the unseen, their home a battlefield, their love for each other, their weapon. Despite the relentless spectral onslaught, the Bells did not falter. They stood together, each of them a beacon of courage in the face of unimaginable fear. Their resolve seemed to weaken the entity, its once overpowering presence starting to wane. With a final burst of spectral power, the entity made one last attempt to assert its dominion. But the Bells were ready. With a united stand, they confronted the specter, their fear replaced with a steely determination. Amid the chilling echoes and the shaking of the house, their courage held fast. As the first rays of dawn broke through the night, the haunting quieted. The once potent spectral entity seemed to have lost its power, its malicious laughter no longer echoing through the house. The Bell family, battered but not broken, stared at the new day, their ordeal finally over. The tale of the Bells' struggle against the spectral entity would go down in history as one of the most terrifying hauntings. The ghostly figure that had once been a formidable force of terror was now a memory, its presence lingering only in their recollection. Despite the terror they faced, the Bells had reclaimed their home. The family, though scarred by their experiences, had emerged stronger. Their love for each other had triumphed over the spectral terror, their courage shining through their ordeal. The haunting of the Bell house came to an end, but its memory remained, a chilling tale of a family's courage in the face of unimaginable fear. It served as a testament to the power of love and courage, a story of how a family, when united, could stand against even the most formidable of foes. The Bell legacy lived on, a beacon of hope for those who found themselves facing their own spectral entities, a reminder that love and courage could indeed conquer all.